Hello, my name is Stefan Bendiks. I'm an architect and urban planner as well, so I'm also not a dedicated health expert. I think it's quite exciting that you invite so many not health directly related people. I have a design practice and I do this kind of work. We do public spaces, quite often with an aspect that includes mobility, alternative mobility. So we do design on master plan level, but also on we execute stuff. And we also do some design-related research, because this topic is quite, let's say, under-addressed in our discipline. I think myself, Rient is one of the few exceptions that we really think about researching also those aspects and try to link them to the practice, influencing the practice. So no fundamental academic research, but more research you could really directly apply. That's some examples of work we did for bicycle infrastructure. Well, my contribution for today would be that I think it makes really a lot of sense to think about health as part of our daily routines. So as urban planner and architect, that's what we can influence, the environment around us and how we use it on a daily basis. And probably you all have seen this picture already. I think it's one of the most used pictures at those kind of conferences. But that shows, I mean, you know it, but it's really an eye-opener that that's how we quite often think about health in our daily life. You know, we have our life and we do stuff we have to do. And then one moment in the day we think about, hey, let's do something about our health. But that's, of course, ridiculous. We should try to include healthy living in our daily routines. Now you might say this is America and Holland is so different. We all are healthy, we drink milk, we go on the bike. But still, this is also familiar to us. We rather go to work like this in traffic jam. Maybe not all of you, but some people do. I mean, the image proves that, rather than like this, right? So there's a lot of, a whole world to gain in, I think, our daily routines, including them in a more pragmatic way. And how can design contribute to that? I mean, that's a kind of example, I mean, a bit too much in the face. I don't want to know every step, every time I walk up a step, how many millicalories I have spent, you know. So I think there must be clever, although it's funny and it might be an eye-opener. I don't know who did that, by the way, in a way. But I think it could be more like integrated naturally in our designs for public space, right? That we are just in a very natural way triggered to be more active. I mean, you said it as well. It makes a lot of sense to move more in our daily life. And being an architect and urban planner, I think public space plays a really crucial role in that. So the way we design, conceive, and maintain our public spaces can have a huge impact, whether they are impeding to a more healthy lifestyle or enabling. So as designers, and I design quite in a very down-to-earth way, I design public spaces in places like Brussels, for example. Whoever was in Brussels knows that it's not the most healthy city. So we have a huge possibility with our work to influence health on a daily routine. Again, I mean, it's always easy to do some US-American bashing, but if you design your public space like this, obviously you're not enabling healthy lifestyles. So going on bike or on foot to work or to the shop or to the kindergarten is really hard if you live in an environment like this. I mean, it makes sense to take the car then. Again, you could say that's America, but you only have to look around the corner. This is an example from Belgium. Also in Central Europe, you find a lot of those conditions where public space is just not done in a way to encourage people to do the stuff they should do. Walk and bike, have kids walk and bike alone maybe. So it's a huge world to gain on a very basic level still. But there are also other examples. This is an example of the city of Vienna, where I was had a professorship for a year, and they have a very exciting program. The city developed that program on having the first and last mile as a really attractive public space experience. So they design streets, parks, and mainly also the ways to the main train stations, to the main bus or other kind of public transport hubs in a very nice way. That when you walk out of your house, you don't have the feeling, oh, I have to walk to the bus stop, and it's so annoying. It's traffic, it's noise. But you have the idea it's like a daily walk. It's like you walk your dog or you take a stroll. Walking in public space to the transport hub is a part of a pleasant activity. And it's a really interesting approach, combining walking and public transport. Copenhagen does similar things for the bike. So it's also a very consequent approach on improving public space to have people cycle more and walk as well to the places they want to go rather than taking the car or public transport. So I think there's a direct relation between public space and public health, and that the one really influences the other. And what I want to show you now is 3 projects. Their methodology not that strong maybe than my predecessors ones, but they're very down to earth. You know, they're just stuff we did. And we didn't even think about health in a direct way when we designed them. It's just something you keep in mind. You do design public space in a way that it is nice, it's attractive, and it makes you walk and cycle more. So I want to show you those 3 things. A public space design where we just eliminate a lot of cars. It helps a lot already. It's a project from Brussels. A bicycle, could say bicycle highway, but we call it more bicycle parkway. We designed in Leuven, also in Belgium, and some more theoretical work or study work, not an execution project. We worked on the cycling strategy for this very city, the city of Groningen. The first project is this square in Brussels. It's a kind of difficult rundown neighborhood. It's one of those neighborhoods where a lot of the guys come that tend to blow up stuff in Paris and Brussels. So a very bad rundown neighborhood. This is like the space looks now. This is what the space looked like in the 50s, so before the kind of amount of cars grew dramatically. That's what the public spaces also in Brussels just looked like. It was just open space, open up for multiple use. And then you see what happens, you know, they design a little park in front of the church, and then they redesign it, and they put the parking to the side, and then the people with the cars take it over again. And that's the situation that we were finding on location when we started this design commission. So public space in a very dense urban condition with very little public spaces, hardly any green space, hardly any place for people to walk, to stroll, to sit, to hang out. And the little space they have, they used it for parking cars. So actually the very simple thing we did also together with inhabitants and users of those spaces, we thought about how can we eliminate cars? What is the minimum space we need to give to the cars? We put some barriers, simply nice barriers, but still barriers to block public space and to dedicate zones for cars and zones for other use. And we turned the space from what looked like this before. It's also very interesting to take the perspective of a kid, you know. I mean, we kind of overlook the cars, but kids, they really look into the bumpers of those cars, so it feels very differently for them to go there, to play there. It's very intimidating. And we turned it into something like this. And it's not a very, let's say, design with a capital D. It's not a fancy thing we did. We just did very simple things. We moved away the cars, we put some basic urban furniture. We designed zones for movement and for resting. And what was very nice to see that as soon as the design was open to public, kids came out and they played soccer there. Other ones, they took the bike and started to cycle there. And it's a very little step, but those kids, they might also cycle to school when they get 16 or cycle to work when they get 18. So it's all already there that it starts changing public space and enabling those kind of activities. A second project I want to show you is a park design we did for the city of Leuven. Next to the railway embankments, there's a strip of land that was not used. It was kind of spontaneous vegetation next to the railway embankment, and we designed a park there, and the question was also to integrate a cycle path. And the original idea was to separate it. You have a space for cars, a space for bikes, and a space for green. And we said, let's maybe try to look for a clever combination. That's what this space looked before. Again, not the most enabling context for having people cycle to the station. That's the direct access to the backside of the new train station of the city of Leuven. There's a huge bicycle parking garage. But yeah, that's not the kind of space you want to cycle to the station, indeed. So what we told the client is, let's not only think about this park, and although it's a quite large stretch of park, it's 900 meters long, we said, like, you have to really look it in combination with other destinations, other points of origin. So we proposed them to connect the cycle route through the park to the Abdijvan Park in the south, a very nice recreational area, to some research park development. There are many schools, there are other kind of natural areas. So we proposed them to not think this cycle route as a little segregated piece of infrastructure, but really to think it in a network with where people come from and where people go to. A nice side effect was that it enlarged our commission from originally we had a commission to do it from here to here. We said, like, hey, we should also do that, and we got actually our commission extended by 60%. So sometimes So economically, it's quite interesting to think a bit larger in the larger context. And what we designed specifically for the stretch of the bicycle paths next to the picture I showed you just a second ago was a kind of parkway design, where we combine local traffic, that will be very few, with the bicycle path. So we didn't separate a car lane and a bicycle path and another car lane for through traffic. We tried to, in an intelligent way, combine it, make a kind of parkway design that could actually work together. And that saved some space, that gave space for the green area. And we also think we can even more, let's say, impede car use by just mixing it with a lot of bikes that will come there. That's the other part of the project where we make a bicycle lane in the railway embankment. That's well, a segregated bicycle lane overlooking the railway tracks and leading to the Abdij van Park I showed you before. The third project is the cycle strategy for Groningen. We were asked to advise the city of Groningen when they wrote their new bicycle strategy. And that is a very interesting commission for us, because it is, if you look at it, everybody talks about Amsterdam and Copenhagen, but Groningen has the biggest cycle share in the world with 61%, 1% more than the last calculation at Amsterdam city center. So how could you improve cycling in a city like Groningen, where cycling is actually already that good? What was interesting is that we were able to discuss with them that you should not focus on cycling as a thing in its own, so not like let's improve the cycling share even more, but let's see what we can use cycling for. And one of the top issues was health. Right? You see on the left side some diagrams about how cyclists are more healthy, have less sick days than other people, and how it can contribute to economic and a livability city. So the strategy includes a number of strategies to really put the bicycle first. So that was one I found very interesting in parallel to the milieu effect rapportage, I think it's called. We proposed a bicycle effect analysis. So whenever you make a project in Groningen, you have to evaluate what is the impact on cycling and walking, amongst others. So it should improve cycling and walking. So when you have a project that does not improve cycling, you have to argue quite well now in Groningen. That sometimes includes also choices. So it includes choices against cars, and it includes choices against public transport sometimes, what is even more difficult. So the only thing now when you walk through Groningen, those buses, they are quite huge in the city center, I think. So maybe you need to think about, do we really need those huge buses in the city center? Can we gain back space for cycling and walking by reducing at least the volume of the vehicles? Now, all those things we will discuss in the future in Groningen. And the last thing I would like to show, and that's a really important one, that Groningen is really far in relying or taking into account the self-responsibility and the capacities of cyclists. So cyclists can actually behave in a very social way, and the same way that it's not only good for transport means, cycling is also a very good social aspect of the city. Cycling and walking makes people come more together, and a car and public transport does that in a much less way. And that leads to a city like this. I think that's a city that is very busy, very livable, sometimes a bit chaotic, but where it's kind of nice to walk and to cycle. And I think that's the future of a healthy urban environment. Thank you.
I propose, Han, can you join us again? We sit down for a short while. I'm going to make a quick inventory on the basis of what you've seen just now. Who would like to ask a question, except the gentleman, or has your question been answered now?
It's only on the first part of the...
Anybody else who really urgently wants to ask? I mean, if it's 3, then we can throw in some improvisation. If it's 20, we have to start. No direct questions except, 1, 2, 3. Now that there are 3, maybe some other people dare to raise their hands as well. At least 3, but we'll start here, and then...
I started my life as a planner. I started on the Bijlmermeer, which is being demolished by now. And I'm concerned that still focus is on top-down design, rather than facilitating grassroots movements.
So a quick reaction from both of you about this after the first question, after the first presentation, this question arose. So there's you've given an impression that I think you want to deny.
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily see it as that we need to design top down. I think we should. The idea of the toolbox is to show in where there's chances to make the daily routines with more human movement. So it can be, of course, you need to plan some things, and you can't have a route between the city center and the university campus by grassroots movements. But I mean, of course, you also need to take that into account. I think usually that you take those movements as a base also for change in planning, and it's not a self-organizing mechanism. But I think as a planner you also must agree.
Where are the limits?
Yeah,
I think it would be great if we could overcome the debate about top-down or bottom-up, and we could all agree that the ideal way of doing this is by finding a proper combination between the two and a right balance.
Thank you. Marcus Grant from Bristol Health Partners. It's not to. I'm taking your advice not to do top-down, bottom-up, but there is something still there that's really important politically, and I think in the UK, and I've been looking at healthy cities. I'm a landscape architect for many years. The block seems to be the political will, and you chase this circle around, and it's until people demand healthier places. In the UK, I'm speaking. I have a lot of experience there, possibly across Europe. I've been working in some of the countries, that the politicians won't deliver these sort of superb examples. You know, there are superb examples around, but they're not the norm. And people are demanding bigger hospitals for their health, not demanding healthier places. And I think therein lies a political conundrum, that the politicians aren't going to back these places. They will back the funding for the medical interventions. And so there's something there. And I just want to say, both of your work, this is fantastic work and very evocative images. And I think that's part of that answer, is people are seeing what could be. But the politicians also have to have that pressure on them.
I think it's a very powerful statement. Maybe we can ask you to help answering the question: how do we get people to demand healthier environments rather than bigger hospitals? Is there any? Does the UK have any suggestions?
Well, we've been, when you work in communities, and we've been going out working in communities using study tours, opening eyes to the barriers and what's holding back their health. People quickly understand. It's that crossing there, or there's no bench for my elderly mother on that hill there, or I go into the city centre and there's no toilet facilities. All sorts of things. People quickly understand that. So I think it's designers moving out into the communities and almost fostering and fermenting that demand for our services.
So I think what you're saying is that in a way we should, getting back to the first, we should help grassroots movements to become stronger and start to ask the right. That sounds.
They've got to make the demands, because the politicians then will give in. Will respond to them.
I think the point is very powerful. There was a second.
Can I say something, Riens, on that question, or is it?
If it's really short, your microphone's working.
Okay. We did a short project in Brazil, and it was about a sort of a linear park. We proposed to have a bicycle route along a very dirty stream, and in a way that was kind of a discussion with the inhabitants. But then somebody said, we have to put the goat in the room, and he explained it as you put the goat in the room, people will see he's shitting in the room, and it's so the water quality could have been improved much more and more, because people will have their daily life seeing that it's very dirty. So those kind of connections, I think, is also key in making cities. Yeah.
They can't hear you.
I'm Christine Maurits. I'm a policy advisor at the City of Nijmegen. At the second speaker had an example of car-free space. Where do the people park their car at the moment? Because I love to have that kind of spaces, but we are developing a new part of the city, and people need to park their car. And there is not enough space to have a space like that.
Yeah. No, it's a project in Brussels, so I don't know if you know the Brussels planning context. There's no mobility plan for these areas. So it's a very different way of working. So you don't have something to fall back, that's negative, but on the other hand, a lot of things are possible. And there are major projects in Brussels done without a proper mobility plan approach. For example, the pedestrianization of the Ansbachlaan is another example. That's maybe not so positive, but the quite good thing in that project was that there was a kind of political will, and we could back it up by inhabitants. So people were for, also against it, mainly the commerces were against it. But it was actually possible to just do it. So, and when you just do it, the cars, they just seem to disappear. I mean, it's also a truth that we calculate parking space before, after we make it a whole science. But my experience in Brussels just proves that sometimes you can just knock out an entire main axis and it still works. And people just then might take the train because they cannot park their car. Or so it's also a kind of traffic engineers make us believe that we need to do a lot of calculations, all very complex. But in a city like Brussels, I mean, in Holland it might be different because it's more maxed out, it's kind of optimized and so on. But in Brussels, you can really just take out a lot of cars and the city still works perfectly or even better. And people then start to think about, hey, maybe I have to, I have to go by bus or by train or by bike. So it's not that complex sometimes. It's just you have to do it, try it. And we also did it in a kind of test run. So we said, like, we tested for a time. We did a kind of temporary arrangement of the area for half a year, and it worked. And then we could make it real. Right?
A third question, which is also somewhere in this region.
Yes, I was wondering, in your last example, in the city of Groningen. Yes, sorry, I'm Jacqueline van der Lubbe, and I'm the designer of public space as well. I was wondering, how does this relate to people people aging, especially in Groningen? I think that's a big issue. And if I see this picture, I'm not sure elderly will feel comfortable. Did you take that into account?
Yeah, this is actually a picture the city of Groningen used in their cycle strategy more to show the problem. But I think it's partly a part of the problem. It's also part of the quality, right? I mean, there's always a balance to find that it should be lively, it should be a bit informal. I think over-organizing bicycle traffic, for example, is also problematic. So this is a critical picture. It's edgy, I think, and you need to make sure that there are alternatives. I mean, this is, I think, one of the busiest streets at one of the busiest times in the city of Groningen. So the city of Groningen thinks about, of course, limiting access for bikes in the Saturday morning situation when there's a market on the center. So you need to, of course, be a bit more differentiated. But I think it's more in offering alternatives to have a route that is quiet and safe for people who like that. But that doesn't mean you need to kind of be very restrictive and block cycle traffic from the whole city center or punish people who park their bikes not in the underground parking garage, like in the central station of Rotterdam now is the case. So I think you need to find ways taking those things into account. But I think it's possible. It's not rocket science. It's just common sense.
We have 5 minutes left for another attempt to define an agenda. I'd really like, in a way, us to leave the room with an idea of what is the next thing we should do if we are a designer, if we are a policy maker, if we are unrelated to health or design. Could each of you try one more time? I mean, you've given suggestions, but they're usually kind of hidden in long sentences and behind beautiful pictures. Could you give a specific example to start with you, because I've already asked Han directly afterwards. Which things, what would you like cities, local politicians, grassroots movements to do to enforce what you've been advocating? One of the things I was thinking about, every city should have a cycle plan like Groningen. Not exactly the same, but fitting to their... Is that something that we should, at the end of this day...
I think it depends first very much about what kind of city we're talking about. I think for Dutch cities, this approach is very useful. In other cities, like in Brussels, I think it's just you need to do stuff. I mean, it doesn't make sense to discuss a lot, to make top-down plans. You just need to use the opportunity if you have a chance, you just do it, you change the city. And it's a very powerful tool in Brussels. So some people really use the kind of absence of planning, of strategy to just do the right thing. Other people do it to do the wrong thing. but it's up to us to do the right thing if we have the opportunity. So it's a kind of opportunistic approach. And Holland is very different. I think Holland is very good in defining things on a strategic level, and exactly the bicycle strategy of Groningen is a very good example. And most cities are working on that now. So I'm actually very positive about how Holland develops. But I think there are many cities in the world that could really profit from a more ad hoc approach, and just if there's a chance to change public space, and then planners can do that, architects can do that, but also civil organizations.
Is that saying there's no need or no urgency for an agenda? We just need to go on like we're going on.
No, I don't say that, but I think that a lot can be achieved by just grabbing any opportunity we have. And it doesn't need to be a health project. You mean none of those projects I showed there was health included in the brief. It's
no, I
just
think
you make
what
it yourself.
combines both of your approaches is that you say basically we don't have to design anything specific to relate to health. If we just spend a lot of, maybe this is almost a closing statement, if we spend a lot of energy in paying attention to public space, making sure that it's clean and safe and well lit and well balanced between car use and pedestrian. That's the big first step, and then I keep thinking the people, the younger the people, the more we have to advocate them to use walking and cycling as a daily routine. So routes to school, for instance, in my view, are terribly important. Is there anybody in the... Han, you want to...
I just want to add on that thing.
Add for the agenda, one more...
Our approach was coming from the public space. What I think is also necessary is now to make also the link between the city program itself. So programming and making the laws and the rules for what is the size of shops, what is the demand that the city could ask to activate the city life and to activate where to plan things and what kind of program can fit in where. That relation is also needed.
Okay. Is there anyone who wants to make a lasting mark on... You are the final speaker, so this is your chance to make a difference.
Pressure. Thank you for your wonderful presentations. I'm Rianne van Meelijk. I'm a researcher at Radboud University, researching public space also. I have two remarks, if that. One is that I was amazed by the two of you both very much focus on traffic or health or movement, whereas I would also plea for seeing public space also as having more passive use, also benefiting health. In our research on elderly people in public space, we came across a very intriguing finding that elderly people like to watch public space, observe it, from simply the view from their window, which is sometimes pretty boring if they live in neighborhoods where people leave in the morning and enter later. So maybe also focusing on the value that public space has, not as a place where we cycle and we run and we walk, but where we sit and we meet and we pause.
That's the social value.
The social value. I was kind of missing that.
Referring to the Brussels point, I'm sure it's nicer to watch kids cycle around.
Definitely.
Than to watch 20 cars being parked.
Yeah. And the second thing that I would like to add is maybe to your very first question, who's going to pay for all of this? I think in the Netherlands we have public space is kind of our holy cow, and we don't want to lose it. It's important, and we should not, we're afraid for privatization and involving other people for paying it. And I like the idea of maybe we should have balance also in which kind of public spaces are important. Where are we really going to focus on? Kind of differentiate between our efforts in improving public space. For example, you have these adopteer een rotonde, adopt a roundabout, where local gardening centers can, make them more pretty. Is that privatization? Is that bad? Or should we allow such things and maybe open up responsibility for public space also to other people than the city government?
Thank you very much. There's no time to elaborate on this.